Welcome to Structure 5.5. This is the last grammar structure in the 5th chapter. I have to warn you, however, this is going to be a bit long. The lesson is on asking questions, l'interrogatif. There are several different ways to do this in French, and so going through it is going to take a little bit of time. Get your popcorn out. The first way to ask questions is by using rising intonation. This is one we've used all along. You have a regular sentence in terms of grammar structure, tu parles français, but instead of speaking it as a sentence, tu parles français, we instead use a rising intonation. Tu parles français? Which makes it into a question. We can also ask a yes-no question by adding est-ce que, or QU apostrophe with a vowel, to the front of a sentence. You can see my regular sentence, tu parles français. If I stick est-ce que in the front of it and use intonation, it makes it into a question. Est-ce que tu parles français? These are things we've been doing all along. The next way that we can ask a yes-no question is by putting one of a couple of different little phrases at the end. For example, n'est-ce pas? It's kind of the equivalent of don't you in English. To do this, we take a normal sentence, tu parles français, and then we add n'est-ce pas at the end, using intonation just like we do in English to ask the question. Tu parles français, n'est-ce pas? You speak French, don't you? It's exactly the same pattern. The other one you can do is the huh at the end of the sentence. C'est pas mal, hein? It's not bad, huh? Same way. They both are the same in English and French. The next thing we can do is new. We can take our normal sentence, tu parles français, and we can invert or switch the subject and the verb by putting them backwards. Parles-tu français? Parles-tu français? And what we're doing here is we're inverting the subject and the verb. And when we do that, it makes it into a question. By the way, we do the same thing in English. It's just that we invert our helping verb. In English, we say, do you speak French? That's different than you do speak French. When we invert or switch the subject, you, and the helping verb, do, it makes a question. So let's look at some other inversions. Typically, when we think of inversion, we think of something that's pretty formal. But so it's not used as much in speech, and partly this is because it's a little bit more mentally complicated than any of our est-ce que formulas. But let's look at some example. Allez-vous au cinéma? Are you going to the movies? Here's our inversion in English. You is the subject. Here's our helping verb. Are you going? As opposed to you are going. Joue-t-elle de la guitare? Does she play the guitar? Again, we've got our inversion with the subject in English and the helping verb. Va-t-on au café? Are we going to the café? Subject, helping verb, inverted in English just like they are in French. The only difference is in French we don't have helping verbs, so we just invert with the subject and the verb. Prend-il un café? Is he having coffee? Here's our helping verb, here's our subject. Est-ce votre portable? Is it your cell phone? This is our subject, and here's our verb. And in English we've done the same thing. It is the subject, is the helping verb that we use in English, and we've done an inversion. So as I'm looking at the bottom left box here, I'm seeing something weird in the top examples, and that's this dash T dash thing going on. I bet you know what that's for. We've got two vowels here. Joue ends with an E, and elle starts with an E. And you know, French tongues, they don't do two vowel sounds together, so we have to help them along and separate the vowels by putting a T in between. This is for liaison. It has no grammatical meaning. It's only for pronunciation. Joue-t-elle de la guitare? Va-t-on au cinéma? But down here on our second two examples, we do not have two vowels together. and we don't need to worry about it. Prend-il un café? Est-ce votre portable? So sometimes we'll have a person's name in a question, or we'll be asking about another person, your friend, your colleague, your classmate. When we name another specific person and we're using inversion, you need to put that person's name in first before you do your inversion. So let's look at some examples. Ton ami fait-il le ménage? Literally, we're asking your friend, does he the housework? Does your friend do the housework? What we've done is we've inverted the subject, your friend, in English, with the helping verb does. We've done something very similar, in other words. Véronique va-t-elle en classe? Here we start with the friend, the name of the person. Then we have the inversion. Is Véronique going to class? We have to repeat a subject pronoun here that we don't have to do in English. The way to get around this, truly, is with using est que. And really with est que, or with je, we almost never invert. Est-ce que je vais chez Paul ou pas? Am I going to Paul's or not? Usually we never invert with je. The only time we ever might is with the verb pouvoir. So let's look at some question words. The book calls these information questions, but these are when you want something besides a yes-no answer. And this, as much as anything, is a vocabulary lesson. There are lots of words, and we're going to follow the same pattern, whether it's est que or inversion, or non, or hein, or n'est-ce pas at the end of the question. To say how much, we say combien. To say how much or how many of something, for example, we say combien de. For example, the difference here is, in the first one, c'est combien, how much is it? But combien de croissants voulez-vous? How many of the croissants do you want? To ask how or what, we say comment. If you want to ask someone you didn't understand something, you want to say huh or what, we say comment. To ask someone's like, we ask comment est-il? How is he? What's he like? Comment ça va? How are you? To ask where, we use où. But to ask from where someone is coming, we say d'où. Où est le café de Fleur? Where is the café de Fleur? Or d'où êtes-vous? Where are you from? Technically in English, we're not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition. You've probably heard of this dangling preposition and wondered what the heck that was. Well, it's when you have a preposition at the end of the sentence and it hangs there at the end all by itself. Technically, we're supposed to say, from where do you come? Or even from whence. That would be old-fashioned, wouldn't it? But in French, you have to do that. You cannot put the preposition at the end of the sentence. So you can't say, où êtes-vous de? You have to say, d'où êtes-vous? Here are some more question words. Pourquoi is why. Pourquoi étudies-tu l'anglais? Or pourquoi est-ce que tu étudies l'anglais? Why do you study English? Quand is when. Quand est-ce que tu rentres chez toi? Or quand rentres-tu chez toi? You can use inversion or est-ce que. Est-ce que, even though it's longer, is actually easier. Que asks what. We use it, and you've seen it with est-ce que all the time. Qu'est-ce que tu prends? What are you having to drink? Quel is a little different. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. I'm going to skip to qui. Qui is who. Qui est? Who is it? So back up to quel. Quel is actually an adjective. It's an adjective that describes a noun. So when we use quel, we're saying which something or what something. In that case, we have to make quel agree. in number and in gender with the noun that it's modifying. In this example, quel film voulez-vous voir? What film do you want to see? In that example, with the word quel is modifying the word, the word quel is modifying the word film, which is masculine and singular. Okay? Let's look at a couple of examples. Pourquoi étudies-tu l'anglais? Parce que j'aime Shakespeare. Why are you studying English? Because I like Shakespeare. Let's look at a bunch of quel examples. Quel jus préfères-tu? What or which juice do you prefer? Because juice is masculine and singular, I'm going to use the masculine singular form of the adjective quel. Quelle heure est-il? You've seen this one before. What time is it? Because the word heure is feminine and singular, I'm going to use the feminine singular form of the word quel. Quel film veux-tu voir? What films do you want to see? Film is masculine and plural, and so my adjective quel needs to be masculine and plural as well. Quelles places sont libres? Which seats are free or empty? Place is feminine and plural, so my adjective quel needs to be feminine and plural as well. We can also use quel for exclamations. If I want to say something like, what beautiful weather, or what a beautiful dress, I would say, quel beau temps, or quelle belle robe. Again, you have to make the adjective quel agree in number and in gender with the noun it's modifying. Lastly, let's go over the basics. We talked about intonation. This is common in casual speech. Où tu habites? Tu habites où? Using intonation and raising your voice are pretty common when people are talking. Est-ce que is used also when you're talking. You can use it when you're writing as well, but it's easier because you don't have to do the mental gymnastics of the inversion. And so, even though it's a little bit longer, in terms of what you write out, it's easier. Qui est-ce que tu attends? Qu'est-ce que tu prends? Inversion is usually used in formal situations, either speaking or in writing. But again, we've got this little bit of mental gymnastics. We have to switch the subject and the verb, and sometimes if we have two vowels together, we have to add the T and so on. Pourquoi vas-tu au café? Why are you going to the café? Où va-t-elle? Where is she going? So, these are the most common ways to form questions, the only ways to form questions in French. This is a lot of information. Make sure you look carefully at this, and you'll need to review it several times before the test. Please write down your questions and let me know in class what doesn't make sense, and we'll go over it there. Merci.